Alright, so welcome back. So our goal is to set up the favorite color part of this app. And what we want to do is we want to actually just kind of do it locally first, and then later we'll actually worry about doing the Firebase side. So the first thing we've got to do, we're making a web app, we've got to make some HTML. So I'm inside my app component HTML. By the way, usually whenever you're working a web app, you'll do a lot of different files, but this one is so simple that we're just going to do everything inside the app component HTML and app component TypeScript. Usually you would do very little in there and you'd do all your work in other places, but this is a pretty simple app that we're making. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to add a div, and this div is going to represent just a color box. So I'll give it an ID, just box. That's a regular old HTML thing, so you can still use IDs. It's not like everything changed. And inside this box, it's just going to say favorite color, and then you can close up your div. And you can save it, and it will say favorite color, favorite color. If we want to style our box a little bit more, we've got the app component CSS file. And one of the nice things about this file is that it will only apply CSS into this component. So it's kind of namespaced, I guess you could say, with Angular. And you'll see that once we start making our own components, and it's really pretty neat. So this really is just going to apply to this area. So I guess in theory I could have just said, hey, apply this to all divs, but it felt more elegant for me to apply it only to this box div. So this box div, we're going to add some rules to it, and we're going to kind of see these CSS changes happen right away. So the first rule I'm going to add is a width rule. I'm going to give it a width of 200 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. And as you save things, like, you can hit save and you'll see it change over there, which I think is fun. We're going to give the words have a color of white, and the background color, so I'm just going to scroll down to background color here, we're just going to make it gray. And if you save it up, you can see that those have an immediate effect. I'd like for that to be centered, so I'm going to say text align center. That will fix it horizontally, and then I also want it to be centered vertically as well. There's a couple tricks for this. The easiest one is just to make your line height equal to your height, and then that results in it being centered. So we've got a little box there, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the color of that box whenever we click on buttons, right? So just the color is going to change, which would be kind of neat. So I'll scoot it up just a little there. So we want some buttons. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding buttons into our HTML. The way you add buttons is, you just say button, nothing really surprising there. You can say the button is got the label blue on it. With buttons, you can also specify their type. Interestingly, the default type, I believe, is submit in HTML. So you can always say button type equals button. That you can get away without saying that, but we'll go ahead and do it. Why not? So we're going to make a couple of these buttons. So there's one that says blue. We'll make one for green, red, purple, rolls home in red, and then we'll have just kind of like a blank line. And then we'll make one that says update. So right now they all say blue, so we need to change that. We're going to have one say green, the next one will say red, and then purple, and then rose red. So rose red is a very specific shade of red. And then this last button is going to say update. And what we're going to do with the update button is we're going to kind of show how traditional web apps have worked, and then kind of how Firebase is different from the way traditional web apps work. And in this app, we're not going to worry about pretty. We're just going to leave it nice and ugly. Oh, I noticed that I don't have my inspect area up. I should always have my inspect area up to the console, right? That's just kind of something you should always have up. So the first thing we want to do is we want this clicking of a button to call some code. And the way you do this is you add a click listener. And the syntax works like this. You say click. And so these parentheses in Angular are very meaningful. They say listen for this event type. So there's an event type that buttons fire called click. And whenever you get it, call this JavaScript. So the thing that's actually inside these double brackets here is actually going to be JavaScript. And so we're going to call a function. It's going to be set color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the color blue. I'm going to be very careful about my types of quote marks because on the outside is double quotes, so on the inside is single quotes. And by the way, this really is JavaScript, so you could totally put a semicolon on it. Most people don't. But the idea is whatever is inside these parentheses is going to be executed as JavaScript. So it's going to be a set color of blue there. And all these others are also going to have very similar things. So I'm just going to go ahead and put set color on those guys. And then I'll leave you to do the last one by yourself, but it's going to call a different function. So I'm just going to update these to all pass in what background color I want. Rose red, by the way, is number sign 8 and then 5 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is the exact color of Rolls-Holman's official red. Changing the HTML says, hey, call this function. If you try to use one of these buttons right now, it's going to go very badly. And it says set color is not a function, right? So we need to fix that. So we're going to go over to our TypeScript and we're going to make a set color function. The way this works in TypeScript is functions. You don't need to actually say public or private. Things are public by default, which is fine because you're going to be calling it from some other file, the HTML file. You're going to be passing it in the selected color, which is of type string. And this function returns nothing, so you say void. You can see that the syntax is different than perhaps some other languages. It's kind of moving to this newer style of you know, class information comes last. So selected color is a string, and then this function returns nothing, so it returns void, right? And what we want to do is we want to do a console log. So you can type CLG, which is kind of neat. And then you can select that option for the dropdown. This is actually coming from one of the extensions. So this JavaScript snippets extension that just makes a little typer a little faster to type, which is neat. So say you selected the color, and then we'll do selected color there. There's a lot of different ways to do logs. I'll show you maybe a couple here really quick, but here I'm just doing string concatenation. So I've got a string, you selected the color, and then selected color. And now when I hit blue, it says you selected blue, green, red, purple, rose red. And then if I click update, nothing happens because it hasn't been implemented yet. Cool, so that actually establishes the connection between the HTML and the JavaScript. Go ahead and take a minute and on your own set up a click listener for update and make it call a function update color, passing no parameters, and so that when you click the button, it'll say, you know, something like you selected update color. So see if you can do that on your own. So I got mine implemented here. I'm sure you can do the code. By the way, a trick in Visual Code Studio, you can see I had to change the HTML and the TS file. On a Mac, it's Command Option S and just saves them both at the same time. But you'll find that with Angular, you're regularly changing like HTML and the TypeScript. And so that save all command is a handy one to know. And you can figure out what yours is by clicking at File, Save All. So mine is Option Command S. So really all we wanted there is that when you click on update color, it calls update color. So the others do what they did before, and this one calls update color. Great. So the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to actually have a color, a variable that gets updated. So what I'm going to do is the same way that I had a title, I'm also going to have a favorite color, and I'll just call it favorite color. Why not? I can't think of any better variable name. It's going to be a string, and by default, it's really, eventually it's not going to have a value by default, but just to kind of start things off, we'll give it a value of gray to kind of kick things off here. Favorite color, the first thing we'll do with it is we'll print that inside the box instead of the word favorite color. So inside the box, it currently says favorite color, so kill that, because otherwise we're just going to be duplicating it. Do a mustache, and then type favorite color, and then a closing mustache. This is the first time of many, many times when we'll be typing JavaScript code into HTML. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, is that this is a line of code. So like, if I misspell it, like favorite color, things go very badly. So it just doesn't show up. So you are regularly typing code into HTML. And the only thing I can tell you is just be very careful, right? Try to use copy paste to your advantage, but typos are death, right? And they don't warn you that it's a typo, which is funny because like in the TypeScript, it warns you all over the place. But when you type in HTML, you type code in here, it doesn't help you. And just kind of be aware that that will be a regular problem as you're kind of like getting started with Angular. All right, so saying it in here is good. That's one good place we're going to use it. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to actually change the color of this box depending on what color is selected. I think I'd planned to do this in a different order, but we'll just kind of do it now because we're in here. And it turns out that what you can do is you can type these brackets and you can type background color and you can say that it's equal to something. So let's go ahead and talk about what we just typed here. There's a lot of little tricks, I guess I'd call them in TypeScript, or sorry, in Angular. One of the little tricks is that you can quickly set certain attributes. So for example, the style attribute you can set things on. Class has a similar thing going. But the way it works is you just say style, and then you say dot, and then you say what you want to set on style. So here we're going to be setting background color. And then you just say, what value you want it to. The area inside here is going to be JavaScript code. You know that it's JavaScript code because this attribute is in square brackets. So this square bracket thing says, hey, here comes an Angular, special thing. And the thing inside here is JavaScript. So if I were to type favorite color in here, that would actually be the favorite color variable. And obviously that doesn't look like much, but let's go ahead and change it to something else. Let's change it to pink, all right? So if I change it to pink, you can see that two things changed. The name inside the box changed because it's using this mustache, double curly brace thing. And then also the background color changed to pink, which is cool. So what we want to do is we want, when we click these buttons, for that to change it as well. So let's go ahead and find our set color function. And let's just go ahead and say this dot favorite color equals selected color. Now I know that there's a lot of new things coming at you here really fast, but I think the best way to learn this new framework is just to start doing stuff. So I know that, it looks like a lot of craziness to you, but you just kind of type it and then eventually you'll really make sense of it. But this dot means, hey, this is a public, member for this class. And then it's got a favorite color. So now what happens when I click a button, it calls this function. This function takes the value that I pass in and it sets the favorite color. Angular uses data binding, and whenever I change the value in TypeScript, it's going to automatically change it in HTML, which is really just kind of cool, right? So as I hit blue, or green, or red, or purple, or rose red, you can see that the color just changed. So you can pause the video if you need. Make sure you don't have any typos, but those are the things that are in the HTML, and then these are the things that are in the TypeScript to make it work. And it's pretty neat how little code we wrote there, right? So we're like doing some real things. So let's go ahead and our goal is to check it in. So we've changed a lot of files. I actually meant to check it in after the last video, but I kind of forgot. And what I do is a couple things. Is one, I go through and I just kind of see what were my changes. So I just kind of always glance at my changes. So there's where I put the space in favorite things. Here's where I added some CSS for the box. Speaking of which, we don't really need background color anymore because we're now setting that in our code. So I didn't really need that one anymore. The app component, we added a lot of HTML. The spec file I deleted. And then the TypeScript, we added some things here. We should also make sure that it still works. So if I refresh this, you can see that it's pink by default. And then as you change it, it goes to these different things. Another thing I recommend you do, but I don't always do, is you run the linter before you check something in. So what I'm doing here is I'm opening up another terminal. So I want to keep it serving, so I open up a new tab, and I type ng-lint. Linters are just kind of looking for the style of your code. They're meant to help everybody in your team do the same thing. And I'm going to see what the linting concerns are, and I'm going to fix them this time. I will not always fix all the linting rules. And so it says type string, trivially inferred from string literal, remove the type annotation. That happened on line 9. Same thing on line 10. And then down on line 17, it's complaining about me using double quotes as opposed to single quotes. So you can see that I would consider the linting warnings to be pretty trivial this time. But, you know, we want our code to look like everybody else's. So they said remove the annotation because it's trivially inferred. I don't know, it's kind of arbitrary what trivial means. And then here they didn't like my use of double quotes. They want me to use single quotes inside TypeScript files. Once you make the changes, you can run ng-lint again, and you can see what linting errors that it's got, and it says that all files are passing now. So make sure my code still works. Yep, still works. And then I'm going to go ahead and check this in. So this is the local only, because we're not using Firebase yet, favorite color. So I go ahead and check that in. When I check it in with Git, it's actually only local to my computer. I have to actually click this area here to synchronize my change with the cloud. All right, so that is the UI for favorite color. Come back next time and we'll do the UI for favorite number. See you then.